The issues affecting you. Revealed, explained, discussed. Now on WGAL 8 in Focus.
Hello, I'm Susan Shapiro. Data center construction is a hot-button issue. The centers are warehouses of computers, servers, and networking equipment that store, process, and move information. A Quinnipiac University poll from last month found 74% of voters in Pennsylvania say they would oppose building an AI data center in their community, while 16% say they would support it. Right now, there are 3 new centers under construction in the Susquehanna Valley, 1 in Middlesex Township, Cumberland County, and 2 in Lancaster County. Other communities are debating them, but some people don't want them built in their communities. Today, we'll learn about data centers, how they work, and we'll hear from a community organizer who's part of a group opposing the center in Cumberland County. We're putting AI data centers in focus. Joining us now is Dan Diorio from the Data Center Coalition. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What is the Data Center Coalition?
We're the National Association for the Data Center Industry. So we have 50 plus members, which are the leading data center owners and operators, as well as companies that lease large amounts of data center space.
So are you a lobbying group technically?
We are an advocacy group, but I think we're also an information resource. There's a lot of misperceptions out there around the data center industry, and we want to be a resource for local communities, state level stakeholders, as well as federal stakeholders on what the data center industry is, what it isn't, and how we're working to address those key issues.
So what is a data center in a nutshell?
It's the brain of the internet and the backbone of the 21st century economy. It's everything we do every day, how we work, how we learn, how we communicate. Every online purchase, every financial transaction, every electronic healthcare record or telehealth appointment, online classrooms, 911 geolocation services, state and local governments, you name it. It's everything we do every day. The average household has 21 connected devices, and those are all run through a data center.
So what's in these huge facilities? They're now being built around the country.
Yeah, they have a pretty common architecture, which is that primarily it's used to house the servers that are hosting cloud computing, helping to facilitate all of those everyday activities. They have cooling systems, they need electricity and power, and they have backup generation systems as well.
Now, those have been some of the bones of contention, the water usage, the electricity usage, and noise and pollution. You talked about myths. Tell me about that. Are people wrong about that?
Well, I think, to start, there's a misperception around artificial intelligence. It is an important growth driver for the industry, there's no question, but it's not the be-all, end-all of data centers. As I mentioned, the vast majority of data centers being built today are for all of those everyday products and services that we rely on. Data centers are actually some of the most efficient water users in the economy. We use less water than certain types of manufacturing, than food and beverage production, and we use less water than what's actually lost to water leaks in municipal water systems on an annual basis. In the world's largest market, Virginia, 83% of data centers use as much, if not less, water than a large commercial office building. Our members are continuously pushing the bounds of water efficiency, ensuring that they're using the most water efficient technology and the most energy efficient technology in the buildings.
And the water's needed to keep these servers cool.
Yeah, servers have to be kept cool. If they're ultimately not kept cool, the temperature could rise as much as a degree a minute until the servers fail. And when the servers fail, everything that goes on in our economy fails along with it. It creates a huge disruption.
I've heard about gel. Is there no new technology that would, lessen the water usage?
There are a lot of different technologies that our members are already utilizing. Whether it be a closed loop system, they're using hybrid approaches in which they can use the outside air, but then switch to a water-based system to reduce their strain on the grid on a hot day. Or they're using a direct-to-chip cooling system where you put it right on top of the chip and you absorb that heat. Or liquid immersion, as you mentioned there, where you can actually put the server itself in a liquid solution to help keep it really cool, and that's energy efficient and water efficient.
What about the noise? You hear people talk about this hum. I've heard people say they're selling their homes because of that noise. Has that been addressed?
Well, that really is, I think, an individual development issue. We see noise really being an issue in a minority of data centers, and that's a study out of Virginia that showed that, Virginia being the largest market in the world. They showed that data centers are not any louder than your common household sounds that you hear. But I think what's important when it comes to noise is how a data center company responds. Are they a responsive partner that tries to mitigate any of the issues that come up with regard to noise? And I think the vast majority of our members, if not all of our members, are committed to being those responsive partners.
Well, how does the township or the residents ensure that it's going to be a responsible partner once they build this huge facility in their township?
Well, I think they should expect data centers to be engaged community partners early and often. And that's what our members are doing, are investing in those community engagement professionals and folks on the ground who will serve as the face of that data center development project. Answer those questions, ensure that the community understands what this project is, what it isn't, and ultimately how it will use resources efficiently and be a
lot
partner.
of people think this has proceeded way too fast, that we need to have some places have put a pause, and Pennsylvania is talking about that, enabling townships to pause that. How do you react to that?
Well, what I would say is regulate us, don't ban us. I think ultimately moratoriums can send a bad economic development signal, whether it be for data centers or any other industry, that this is going to be a place that's not hospitable for development and bringing new businesses and opportunities in. Work with the industry to address those concerns, expect the industry to address those concerns and engage with the community. And I think if we can establish those guardrails, this is a really great opportunity for jobs, for tax revenue for Pennsylvania communities.
Speaking of jobs, obviously a lot of jobs in constructing these. How many jobs exist in carrying through with the operation?
There's tremendous job opportunities here. As you mentioned, construction, but we rely on local electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians to maintain these facilities when they're up and operational.
I mean, how many people are needed to maintain a facility?
Yeah, it depends on the size of the facility, but you see upwards of 100, 200 as the facilities grow. And those, again, are professionals in the skilled trades. But also the technicians that work in the facility in IT. These are jobs that don't require a 4-year degree. You can get a certification from a local community college and get a really good paying job in this industry. For every 1 job in a data center, 4.5 jobs are supported elsewhere in the economy.
Can you understand that people might be concerned, as I said, how fast this has proceeded and the old not in my backyard?
I think it's certainly easy to understand why, and I think the industry recognizes why, how it has to lean in and ensure that communities are going to see the benefits from these facilities and be those good partners. But it's important to understand the demand. This is all of us driving the demand, and we're on a hockey stick-like level of demand right now, and the industry is trying to build out as fast as it can to meet that.
People want the technology, that's for sure.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate you being here. Coming up on WGAL 8 in Focus, we'll hear from a community organizer about his effort to oppose a data center in Cumberland County.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
Joining us now is Andrew Dimsky, a member of Neighbors Against PAX 1, a data center in Middlesex Township, Cumberland County. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Susan.
How did you get involved in this?
Well, the data center is about 3,000 feet from my house. And so when I first heard it was coming into the area, I just started doing research on, hey, what is a data center? What is it up to? What things should we be aware of if we have a new neighbor coming into town? And that's where I began to learn about what goes into it, some of the concerns that other people had in other states. And then I started showing up at township meetings too to figure out more about this specific site in Middlesex Township.
What concerned you about a data center?
The first thing that pinged my radar as a dad of 4 was the low frequency noise that comes off of these facilities. Because they have so many computer racks inside of them, those obviously need to be cooled. And so to cool something, you need to move a lot of air. And so there's a lot of fans moving air in and out. Some of them are air conditioned, so there's like compressor units on there. Other ones are like hybrid cooling with water involved in it. So there's a lot of different fans and mechanical units on the rooftops that emit noise. And on top of that also is the diesel generators, the backup generators that these facilities leverage. And at Middlesex, the PAX 1 facility is going to have 532 generators on site. And those generators need to be tested at least 30 minutes a month. And so if you do the math, if they did them one at a time, that would be like 13 hours a day, all month long.
The industry is here and says it's done a lot to, reduce the noise of these facilities. You don't believe that?
It's convenient for them to say that without any specifics behind it. Like they've done noise studies for Middlesex Township, and they come right up to our noise ordinance thresholds. And in Middlesex, it's 70 decibels dBA at the property line that they're allowed to do, and sounds complicated, but that's roughly a running vacuum in your living room. And the dBA measurement threshold doesn't capture any of the dBc, the hums that come from the facility. So when you look at data centers down in Virginia, a lot of local residents complain because there's a hum that they can't escape, particularly on the second floor of their homes. And so I don't know what they're doing to overcome that. They've pointed to technology, nameless technology, but at the same time, since we're in the middle of a data center bonanza, there's supply chain constraints that they're having to deal with as well. And every month they spend offline is millions of dollars. So at the end of the day, as a resident, my concern is they're going to do what they need to do to get online.
And I imagine, are you concerned about your property value?
It's in the equation for sure. The health of my family and my neighbors and my cows are like the bigger things in there. The property values are in the equation. I don't know exactly how that impacts things, but we live in a rural community right now. And if you bring in like heavy industrial applications into a rural community, you're changing the profile of the person that wants to live there.
Why did Middlesex Township approve this?
Well, I think they bought the line from the developers that this is low impact, high revenue. And as my neighbors and I have, as we've shown up at township meetings and we've pressed the Board of Supervisors, like, how did you come to this decision? This seems crazy. They said that we spoke to each other, we talked to staff, and we thought it was a good idea. And that's one of the flags we have is if you're going to buy the line from the developer, you should at least do your due diligence as an elected representative and talk to the other side. The developer took our local leaders down to McLean, Virginia to show them around some data centers, which is great. Go see those things and see how they operate. But wouldn't you want to also talk to some concerned citizens groups down there, some people who live next to these facilities? They didn't do that, and that's a flag for us.
What about zoning? Obviously, that's the way townships can control these.
Yeah.
How did your township work that?
Well, if you think of a zoning map, it's basically a collection of labels, right? You can do this here, you can do that there. In Middlesex, where this facility is located right now, the label for that zone is called MU1, which is like a mixed-use residential district. Houses and small businesses are designed to be in there. What the township did is they layered a data center overlay, like a sticker on top of that label that said, in this specific perimeter, you're allowed to now build a data center. And if you look at the usage table in our township, the heights of the buildings, they double. The amount of space you're allowed to cover with asphalt, that increases as well. The industrial use went from residential neighborhood all the way to the other side of the scale up to the industrial side. Because if you wanted to build a data center anywhere else in the township, you'd have to do it in an industrial zone. So they took 700 acres of farmland that's surrounded by 65 residential lots and agricultural lots, and they smacked this industrial scale application in there using this overlay sticker. And it just doesn't fit with any of the neighborhood around it.
Now, I know the group or you have filed a lawsuit. What kind of, redress do you think you have?
Yeah, so we've initiated a legal challenge. We started with the Township Zoning Hearing Board. It's a substantive validity challenge where we're saying that the township engaged in illegal spot zoning. And spot zoning happens when you, for the benefit of one property owner, you carve out a specific use, and that use creates an island where it exists, and that island looks different than all the neighbors around it. And it's exactly what they did in PAX 1. And so we filed our substantive validity challenge with the Township Zoning Hearing Board. They elected to allow a 60-day window to pass without granting us a hearing. And so now we've placed an appeal into the Cumberland County court system to be heard at that level.
What advice would you have for residents of other townships where these are being proposed?
You got to show up and just ask questions. What happened in Middlesex is the developers worked with our zoning officer to help draft the ordinance that would govern them. So not only did they ask for this property line to be put right on their property, but they also helped create the ordinance that would govern their use on that property.
That seems like a conflict of interest.
A slight conflict of interest, you could say. And so my flag for everybody is you have to show up at your township meetings, at your borough meetings, whatever it is, and ask your supervisors, ask your zoning officers, what ordinances do we have in place today to regulate data centers? Because if you don't have anything, you're susceptible because the Pennsylvania code says you have to allow use for basically every application. So you got to be able to say it goes somewhere in the township. So get ahead of the developers. Make sure you've got protective ordinances in place, and there's some great organizations out there that do kind of some example ordinances. But if you can get ahead of the developers, you can help craft that, and instead of allowing them to write their own rules and then you're stuck living with them.
Just quickly, we all want the technology. These are the way that it is going to be, run. Yeah. So how do you argue, about that?
Absolutely. AI and data centers, it's all important for national security, it's important for the economy.
And even farming, I imagine.
I imagine that it's in there somewhere. Our stake is that you can walk and chew gum at the same time, right? Like, we don't have to engage in a thoughtless bonanza of development and eat up farmland in order to build these facilities. There are brownfield sites, there are other industrial sites, and the scale is insane. When I talk to people about how big these facilities are going to be in Middlesex,
they're huge.
Like, it's hard to wrap your mind around it. It's 900 feet long, 200 feet wide, 80 feet tall. And so my argument is not that, hey, don't have data centers. I think a moratorium is the wrong choice. The real thing is, can we do proper planning, and can we put them in places where uses align and residents are engaged and they have a voice in it too? And it's not developers talking to elected leaders behind the scenes for months and even years sometimes before anyone knows about it.
Okay, well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Construction of the center began in April. We reached out to Middlesex Township supervisors for a statement following this interview. They declined, but confirmed several supervisors and township and county staff toured several data centers in 2025 and this year in Virginia. We also asked about Andrew Dimsky's claim that the developer met with members of the Zoning Commission to draft the zoning overlay. They did not respond in time for our production deadline. We also reached out to Pennsylvania Data Center Partners, which is building the PAX 1 data center. A statement on behalf of the founder and CEO reads in part, in the 6 months before we submitted a zoning amendment, Middlesex Planning Commission, Middlesex Board of Supervisors, Cumberland County Planning Commission, and Cumberland County Board of Commissioners each conducted multiple public reviews of the proposed comprehensive zoning ordinance, as well as the individual zoning amendment application that was submitted, both of which included data center language. The statement goes on to say, we've engaged in multiple conversations with community members and other local stakeholders. We've never said no when asked to sit down and discuss the proposed development. Coming up on WGAL 8 in Focus, we'll take a look at how township supervisors make decisions about data centers.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus. Coverage you can count on.
Joining us now is Dave Sanko, the Executive Director at the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. Thanks for being here.
You bet. Thank you. Thanks for your
I
invite.
imagine your association is hearing quite a lot about this subject.
We are. It's certainly the shiny object of the year. We have a large state association statewide. We represent 6 million people. There's almost 1,400 townships that govern local communities. And when it comes down to decisions being made at the local level or the state level, it's a whole lot easier on communities to have decisions made by people who live there rather than nameless, faceless bureaucrats in Washington or Harrisburg.
Have the zoning ordinances kept up with this industry?
This is the hyperscale data centers it's a new use. No, it wasn't. It's like, trying to zone for like flying cars. I mean, no, we haven't yet. There's been a lot of catching up over the course of the last 2 years, and some have done better. But I think everybody's on it now, and it's getting better.
We heard about the Middlesex Township, Cumberland County, putting in what he described as an overlay in terms of zoning. Is that something that's done often?
It's an available tool. I mean, an overlay district is not something that's unique to data centers. It could have been an overlay for a retail district or a shopping mall. So overlays as a zoning district. I mean, when you think about zoning for communities that have it, they're generally there's like industrial and commercial and residential and agricultural, and then as kind of basic ones, and then they get more detailed, whether it's light industrial or heavy industrial or high density housing or low density housing. So an overlay district is an attempt just to kind of take a couple of those things and blend them.
Can you understand residents' concerns about noise, about water usage, about pollution, about just plain old quality of life around these?
Oh yeah, look, I think that's what a lot of the township supervisors' concerns are as well, about the quality of life in their community. Because at the end of the day, that's what they got elected to do, to provide quality services at an affordable price for their community and to help maintain the quality of life in that community. So anything that disrupts that, whether it's a crime gang or a quarry, or in this case a hyperscale data center, needs to be addressed and it has to fit. I mean, the state law says you have to allow for everything, every use somewhere. but every use doesn't have to be everywhere.
So there's no way they can just say no.
The law just won't let them say no. You can put restrictions on. You can say it can only be a certain height. You have to have buffers. You have to have it screened. But you are not, unless the legislature rules the usage as illegal, like drug manufacturing or illegal drug manufacturing. If it's illegal, then you can say no. But if it's a legal business, you're not allowed to say no. That's why some communities get jammed with adult entertainment or things that they'd rather not have, but the law says you have to allow for them.
All right, well, Dave, stay with us. We'll talk more about the impact on townships around the Susquehanna Valley and beyond.
This is WGAL 8 in Focus, coverage you can count on.
We continue our conversation with Dave Sanko, the Executive Director at the Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. Dave, why do you think Pennsylvania has been such an attractive place for these data centers?
I think, and part of the reason I think is because of the climate. These things generate a lot of heat. You have to keep them cool. And if you're going to build one in Houston, Texas, or Atlanta, Georgia, Pennsylvania's it's cooler, so it'll be cheaper to operate them here. So I think that's one of the reasons it's attractive. It's a big state. We have a lot of land, but again, they don't work everywhere. Just because you have the land and you have the power and you have the water, you still have to find a place where it works. And it doesn't always work in communities. We're neither an advocate nor an apologist for the industry or for the environmental community. We're advocates for the taxpayers and helping make sure that they can have good quality of life in their communities.
Well, speaking of taxpayers, they talk a lot about bringing a lot of tax revenue, at least the industry does. Do you see it that way?
Not in Pennsylvania, no. I think we see in Virginia, as an example, where there's the capital of it right now, they're allowed to tax Pennsylvania, you're allowed to tax the land and the building, just regular property tax. In Virginia, they're allowed to tax the contents of the building, so the value of all those computers and that continual replacement and what goes on inside the building is taxable. Here it's not. So the golden goose that lives in Virginia is not transportable to Pennsylvania.
And in some cases, we're taking farmland to build these.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's important to have the local governments making those decisions, because they'll know their farmlands and they'll be like, no, that's not a good idea. We don't think that's an agricultural community. That's not zoned for it. You can't do it there. But if you're sitting, somewhere in Washington or sometimes even in Harrisburg, and you're looking at a map and you say, oh, look, there's a place where there's nothing. Let's put it there. And then when you get there, you find out it could be, a swamp, or it could be farmland, but it's not a place you ought to be building a building.
And what happens when these are no longer, needed? They need to be decommissioned.
The cost of decommissioning, we went through this battle a couple of years ago on solar fields and what was going to cost to decommission them, because there will come a point where the useless or useful life is gone, and if the company's still around, great. But if the company goes bankrupt, that burden to clean up that site is going to fall to the local government, and that means local taxpayers. And we were advocating for our members to have those decommissioning rules in place, so that the businesses, the builders, had to put that money up for bonds for later on, if that ever needed to happen. And that's always been done at the local level until about 2 months ago, and the legislature is now taking that back to Harrisburg.
So something to think about, that's for sure. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Sure.
Thank you for joining us for WGAL 8 in Focus. For all of us at WGAL, I'm Susan Shapiro. Join us again next Sunday morning at 11 o'clock for WGAL 8 in Focus, right after NBC's Meet the Press. And you can watch each episode of In Focus, plus WGAL's latest newscasts, original programming, and more. Just download the Very Local app and stream for free on Roku and Amazon Fire TV.